I always thought that it would be the commercial buyer that would break the system. And I think I might be wrong on that. I think it actually could be the retail buyers that are driving the banks crazy.
Please join us for our next live stream, Sunday, April 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll go over current events, past guests, and of course, gold and silver news. Once again, our next live stream will be Sunday, April 25th, 9 p.m. Eastern. See you then. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television, SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. As always, if you're new to our channel or if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe, hit the bell to be notified of new updates, and give us a thumbs up if you like what we do. As always, we truly do appreciate your support. Keith Neumeyer, CEO of First Majestic Silver Corporation and Chairman of First Mining Gold, joins us today. Mr. Silver, as he is known in some circles, having proffered many well-regarded editorials and analysis of the silver mining industry over the years, was named EY's Mining Entrepreneur of the Year back in 2012 and Kitco's CEO of the Year in 2019. We're honored to have Keith here as a return guest. It's time to saddle up and silver up for Keith Neumeyer. Keith, welcome back to SBTV. How are you doing?
It's great, Patrick. Nice sunny day, and silver prices are up today, which is good.
Yes, they are up, and I hope they continue to go up. You know, Keith, I want to start with the demand for silver, somewhat being fueled by the Wall Street silver narrative to buy physical and break the COMEX. Have you seen any impact from the recent Wall Street silver movement and the call to buy physical silver in the mining industry? And was there or is there noticeably more pressure on silver miners to meet the demand?
You know, well, look, we saw one of the miners just recently hold back some ounces, which was nice to see. For something First Majestic has done many times over the last few years, and nice to see another mining company, come to the same conclusion that sometimes it's just best to hold back some of our production, right? But we're trading in a physical market, and unfortunately we do price our metal in the paper market, and it's the paper market where the issues do occur. So when you talk about what effect this whole Reddit movement has had on the mining sector, it comes out of price. Of course, metal prices are being buoyed, I think, by this new investor. And I'm super encouraged by it because, this is a whole new group of millennials that otherwise hadn't looked at this market. They were all caught up in, different, high-tech stocks or, different things that they're investing in, like GameStop and, others, the Robinhood crowd and all that group. So for them to actually start focusing on this little tiny market, silver, which is a $20 billion market, I think it's fantastic. So we're seeing sales increase, physical sales increase for sure. Our website, despite the fact we're selling silver at $30 an ounce, which I'm almost embarrassed to actually be selling silver at such a premium. I'd love to be able to drop it, but the volumes of sales are coming into the website, and we're tiny, compared to some of the bigger dealers out there, is pretty phenomenal. And I've not seen this type of volume of sales ever in the last 15 years.
If you mentioned that one company holding back supply, if more companies held back supply, would that push up the silver price, or would that actually begin to hurt miners in some way?
Well, mining companies have to sell their product. It's just like, what would Levi's do if they just made a bunch of jeans and kept them in the warehouse? It doesn't make any sense. They have costs, they have G&A, they got employees to pay. So there is a certain percentage of metal that we have to sell just to pay our bills. So so we do holdbacks. It has to be for relatively short periods of time, and we've done it in the past. More of a kind of a message to the other miners to try to get them to maybe do the same thing. And now we've seen another company do that. But for a dory producer, as First Majestic is, like we have 3 mines, and each of these mines produce dory bars. Your listeners should look at the difference between what a concentrate is versus what a dory bar is. But a dory bar is, basically just a block of silver with some other impurities, but it's not quite at the refined stage, but it's, 93, 95%, maybe 97% silver. So it takes very little effort to convert that up to a 999, commercial bar that's, sellable commercially. But if you're producing a concentrate, which is just basically a pile of black dust, that's got all kinds of, pollutants and metals in it that has to go to a smelter to get heated up and burned down and then get separated through all kinds of different chemical processes. It's very expensive to do it. We're fortunate enough we're not in that business, but for those mining companies that are in the concentrate selling business, it's much more difficult for them to hold back metal because they've got deals with the smelters, and they deliver this pile of black dust powder to the smelter, and you tell the smelter, oh, by the way, pull the silver out and put it aside on the side of the wall there. So, and we'll talk, we'll try to figure out what to do with it later. They're going to laugh at you and say, come on, like we've got an agreement in place where you're selling us this metal and we want it, so you can't hold it back even if you wanted to. And most of the metals, most of the silver produced on a worldwide basis is in the form of concentrates.
Okay, you've mentioned the cost. First Majestic, you've done quite well. You've done well that first gold. Kind of wondering here, are there any plans there to expand to where you may even have your own mills, your own refineries?
I've talked about it and had many discussions with people on that specific topic. Not just refineries, actually a mint as well. It's always tough to find the right opportunity to we could build one from scratch, but it's almost like a black box technology, and you really need a very skilled group of individuals that have experience in that part of the market. The mining sector generally doesn't go down that route. Generally, mining companies just generally mine and sell the metal. They don't get into the refining and minting side of things. But I'd love to see First Majestic accomplish those things, and having more control over the entire supply chain, I think is positive.
There's also been much chat on social media of late about national mints having a shortage of silver to deliver, and on the other hand, mints are saying that they do have sufficient silver for delivery. What's your view regarding the gap between the shortage that retail investors experience versus the supply is fine replies from the mints?
Well, the retail investor is the last to get access to the metal. This is a very, very tight market. Silver, depending on what stat you want to look at out there, in my opinion, has been in a deficit for well over a decade and likely 3 decades. The above ground supply of silver is at historic lows. Even the last run up in 2011 to $50 an ounce silver wiped out most of the family owned silver, the jewelry, the silverware, the household silver that was just sitting in drawers, for decades, that it was accumulated by families. That's basically all gone now. So the only big hoards of silver today is really in the ETFs. And that is, unless there's some major change where all of a sudden ETFs want to start putting supply out, well, maybe the SLV might, because, that's a paper ETF versus, the PSLV, which is a physically driven ETF. But there's really no hoards out there anymore. And so if you're one of the banks, it doesn't matter who, but Scotia or HSBC or Scotia's out of the business now, but JP Morgan, any one of these groups, and you have X amount, there's a certain amount of ounces coming in your door, because what the mines are going to be supplying you through your relationships with the refineries. So that silver is going to end up with your best customers. And that generally is the big commercials, the Sonys, the Toyotas, the Teslas, the Samsungs of the world. That's where most of that metal will go. And these banks have these long-term contracts in place whereby they're obligated, to supply this metal to them. if there's anything left over, that might get into the minting system, might get into the retail system, whereby it allows retail individuals to actually participate by buying metal. But that's just the scraps in the market, and that's why the premiums are so high, because these mints are scrambling to try to get the silver into their system so they could actually produce these retail products, and no one wants to sell it to them.
Yeah, you mentioned the Samsungs, the Sonys, the Teslas, and we're hearing also, the renewable energy, solar panels, all these things. So you have such a high demand from the commercial side, even the government side, and then the retail side. And so all of these things together, why aren't we seeing silver really moving up as far as price?
Well, we have, but nothing goes straight up, and
Yeah.
nothing happens overnight. I think that there's probably a bit of a battle going on between the paper and physical markets right now. The banks are used to running this market. We saw what happened in palladium. We've seen what's happened in other metals like cobalt, and another one that I watch. I just lost the name of it, but chromium. That was not chromium. Anyways, whatever. That doesn't really matter. But I was looking at buying it for $3,000 an ounce a couple of years ago, and it's now $30,000 an ounce. And it's just like, these markets are the banks try to control them as best they can, but they are tiny little markets, and eventually, in my opinion, the physical market will take over. And it's just a matter of waking up the banks who are on the paper side of things and saying, holy cow, like our models are wrong. What our trading is wrong. We're starting to lose money on this trade. It's not working like it has worked over the last 20 or 30 years. And we got to tell our traders to change their ways of trading, change their algorithms, or just get out of the market, like Scotia's got out of the market, just because the banks start losing money. I think that's where we're going to be heading. I still think, Wall Street and Bay Street, I still think they, look at silver the same way they've always looked at silver, as the poor man's gold. I actually don't even think they understand that silver is a strategic metal as I do. This call would not be possible without silver. Many of the things we do as a human race would not be possible without silver. But yet these, 30-year-old MBAs who are trading, algorithmic trades on, COMEX or the LBMA, are just looking at simpler price movements and 50-day, 20-day moving averages, and that's all they care about because it's worked for them for several years. But then all of a sudden, you get this new buyer, and I always thought, when I put this company together 19 years ago, that it would be the commercial buyer that would break the system. And I think I might be wrong on that. I think it actually could be the retail buyer that could break the system, because I think the banks know pretty well what the commercials need, over time, because they could see the growth in the business. They could see how many computers are needed. They could see how many cell phones, how many automobiles. They know all that stuff. They say they could run their numbers, and they kind of know, okay, this is what we need to supply industry over this given amount of time. What they don't know is what the retail investor is going to do. And I think that's what Reddit and this whole Robinhood movement has brought to the space. And this has brought to the space. And I think it's those investors that are driving the banks crazy.
Okay, so to break the banks, as you say, or to break the market, retail investors, we simply need to keep buying physical. And is the small 1 ounce bars and coins, is that going to do it, or do we have to move higher up into the 5 kg 1,000 ounce bars?
I don't own a 1,000 ounce bar. I just don't. I don't know what I'd do with a 1,000 ounce bar. It's just like you use it as a doorstop or something. I don't know. It's not a very convenient way of owning metal, in my view. It's. I like small quantity. I like 1 ounce, 5 ounce, 10 ounce. I own a couple of kilos. Actually, probably more than a couple of kilos. But that's about as big as I would go myself, because at the end of the day, if you want to use this stuff for whatever purpose, you want to sell it, you want to use it for barter, you want to trade it for something else. small quantities. I personally think that's the way to go. And this whole stacking movement's pretty exciting. I'm watching it on Reddit and Twitter, and there's a lot of people out there that are really getting serious about stacking silver, and starting to circulate their stacks on the internet. And it's pretty nice to see. A lot of guys are buying 1,000 ounces at a time, in the form of 1 ounce and 5 ounce ingots and coins.
Keith, when we talk about silver shortages in the retail investment world, the causes can be things like bottlenecks in the supply chain. It can be trying to get on a container to be shipped. Shipping is pretty tight right now. But I think we'll be able to touch on this, but I just want to be clear. In all your years in the mining industry, have you seen a silver shortage on the miner side where there is less silver coming out of the ground industry-wide?
Well, that has been happening. If you look at, we're a member of the Silver Institute, and peak silver was 2015. And if I remember the numbers exactly, I think it was 880 million ounces of silver produced that year. And it's gone down every single year since then. The 2020 numbers still aren't out. I've seen some preliminary numbers, of around 800 million, but I've actually seen numbers that were closer to 750 million ounces. So we've had now 4 or 5 consecutive years of mining companies producing less silver. And the consumption is, even if you said the consumption was flat, which I don't buy, with electric cars and all the different gadgets we're producing these days, solar panels and the like, these all require vast amounts of silver. So I think silver demand has been increasing while supply has been dropping. But again, this goes back to the paper market. The paper markets run by the big traders, the big banks. They don't get it, because I actually don't even think they watch the supply demand fundamentals of the metal itself. I think all they do is stare at a computer screen all day.
Yeah, that's kind of leads into my next question, where if we do believe that the silver price is intentionally suppressed, how does silver ever get to that triple digit number?
I don't know if it's actually intentionally suppressed. I think it's just managing a book. I was a trader for 6 years for 3 banks in Canada. So I know, banks don't like to take on big positions. They're risk adverse. Their clients are welcome to do what they wish, but the bank itself is not going to be taking any kind of one side of any particular trade for any length of time. So, some of this chatter out there that you see about, JP Morgan owning this or this bank shorting that, I don't really, I read it, but I don't really buy it. I think these banks are just acting for clients who are in the market. They need this physical metal for whatever they need it for. And there's a sell side to that equation where there's, people that are hedge funds or, whatever the case may be, that are willing to take the short side of that trade and expecting to deliver into that buyer, over whatever length of time they've agreed to buy. And it's all just based on, they look at 20-year, 30-year charts and see what silver has done over that period of time. And it's just, then they build algorithms, and then they just trade the market, and they're just trying to make money. They're not fighting silver, I don't think. They're not fighting copper prices. They're not fighting oil prices. They're just simply people, hedge funds, commercial people out there. They're just trying to make money. And that's what it comes down to. But I think there's a disconnect between actually what the supply demand fundamentals of the underlying commodity is that they're trading. So I think their systems of trading are incorrect based on old fundamentals, and they haven't caught up to this new paradigm whereby silver has become the strategic metal. Because you go back into the 80s, and silver was used for basically photography, which was dying, and the coinage had died. It was going back to the 60s. It was used in coins, so that all died. So in the 80s, we had this enormous amount of above ground supply of silver, something in the order of 5 billion ounces, and it's taken a good 30 years, for that silver to be consumed by industry in a variety of different forms. And now it's getting to a point where it's critical. but Bay Street and Wall Street have not woken up to that fact yet.
That's an interesting point there. Keith, earlier we touched on the doré bars and the refining process. I've heard that at least one refinery will be halting the production of 4-9 silver in favor of producing 3-9 silver due to the increased demand for silver and that it's quicker to produce 3-9 silver products. Have you heard anything regarding this?
Off air, we just had a bit of a quick chat about this, but no, I'm not up on that at all. Our products that we sell on First Majestic website are guaranteed to be 3-9s, and that's what we've always done. We know by doing periodic assays of our product that it's generally 3-9-5, 3-9-7, 3-9-3, and that's as long as it doesn't drop below 3-9s, we're good, and it never does. It's always the refineries are very good at this stuff. I don't know if you really need 4-9 silver. I know it's used in very special circumstances, but from a investment perspective, I think 3-9 plus is really all you need.
And from the mining industry, I mean the refiners anyway, is there a huge difference between refining silver from 3-9 to 4-9? I mean, a cost difference to do this.
I've got friends in the industry, and you've made me quite curious, and I'm going to look into this a little bit to find out the answer to that question. But there is 5-9 silver available, but it's used in very, very unique circumstances. You wouldn't just go buy that at your regular store. It's used in medical equipment and so on. 4-9s, I'd have to check my collection of ounces to see if any of them are actually stamped with 4-9s. I think I might actually do that just out of curiosity, but I've never so much worried about it. I've always looked at 999s as really kind of the standard.
Okay, another great point. Keith, you describe yourself as, and I quote here, a libertarian, a believer in small governments to have the privacy to spend on what we want to think freely. Unfortunately, that's not the direction the world is headed toward, end quote. You gave that quote to the Free American Press TV. Do you see a much more draconian type of control system coming up, especially when we hear things like the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab saying or talking about the Great Reset and you will own nothing and be happy and these types of things?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting direction our planet is moving. And, I'm not particularly optimistic short term. I think we have, unfortunately, a lot of people my age, I'm in my 60s and older into their 70s that are kind of, they have a vision of the planet. And, some have actually gone as far as to clearly state that there's too many people on the planet, that we need to reduce the population of the human race, which is a pretty scary thought, right? And, and how they're going to accomplish that, it's another discussion altogether. But, if there's a group of very, very high level thinkers out there that think that the planet is being destroyed by the human race and the human race is the plague and the parasite, and then the human being has to be somehow curtailed or reduced in numbers to save the planet, that's very elitist, type thinking. And there are individuals, I'm not going to name names because I don't want this video to be taken offline, but there are some, I would suggest people listening do their own research, but there are groups out there that are pushing that agenda, and it is quite scary. So fortunately, we have a very large millennial population on the planet, and it's kind of the echo population in a way, and they have different views, and as they mature and get older, they're going to start taking more power in strategic places. And I think that's going to be the millennials that are really going to make the big changes that are going to really benefit the human race. But I think we've got some rough roads, rough patches to go, likely over the next 10, possibly even 20 years of turmoil, which is going to be a bit challenging for us. And that's why I'm so focused on precious metals, because I think, we really need some kind of security that we can control ourselves to, for our families and ourselves to get through this next very volatile stage of the planet, which, as I said, is kind of scary.
Amen. Completely agree with you there. I guess this is what some people call the fourth turning.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
yeah,
I was listening to Neil Hell this morning, actually.
yeah, it's a great book. I would recommend people to get his book. But Keith, do you think we're also on the brink of a monetary system reset towards a system that will once again possibly have a link to gold, or do you think we're going to get another fully fiat system, maybe even a fiat digital system?
I think depends on how far you want to go out. I think that we are heading down the path of a digital currency, a digital system whereby we've got no control over our spending. Well, we have control over the spending, but everything will be tracked. So there'll be no privacy for our spending, which it's very unfortunate, because if you want to go buy a beer, like, why can't you go buy a beer? But all of a sudden, you get pulled over by a police officer, and then that police officer sees that you buy a beer every day, and it's your normal part of your life, and he concludes that you must be drunk right now because you're a constant beer buyer. Then you get flagged, and you could get fined or whatever the case may be, just because they have the history of your spending. Right. So that is a very slippery path to go down. And unfortunately, the governments are going down this path. Of course, they blame it on, whatever, money laundering, or they blame it on, tax avoidance, or, whatever they blame it on. But, they come up with their reasons to do this. And unfortunately, I'm quite shocked how passive the human race actually is right now. To have the entire planet shut down the way it is due to this COVID virus that many opinions surrounding that exist, but and there's very few people out there that are actually speaking out against the governments of what they're actually doing. Taking away more controls, trying to take paper currency out of our pockets, trying to monitor everything the human race does, telling the human race they have to shut down their businesses that they've run for the last 30 years, forcing people to wear masks and all this type of stuff. And people are just passive. They just let this happen. And it's quite an interesting, phenomenon that's occurring. And I was listening to Jim Rickards a couple of weeks ago, and he's one of the only people I've really, I respect him, but one of the only people that have actually really come out in an aggressive way against some of these controls that are coming into place. Most people are just accepting it as the new norm.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with just about every single word you said there, Keith. Keith, I know you got a busy day ahead of you, so before we wrap up, and I could talk to you about these things forever, but before we wrap up, can you tell us more about First Majestic Silver, First Mining Gold, and any updates on any information that you'd like to pass along to us?
Sure. Yeah. No, it's I'm invested right across the mining sector. I do. Of course, I've got my two companies that First Majestic Silver is my full-time job. I put the company together. We're in our 19th year now. We have 5,000 employees, or actually a little over that, about 5,200 employees, and we're producing something in the order of 23, 24 million ounces of silver equivalent, of which about 65% of that is silver, and the rest is gold. We've only produced two metals, gold and silver, in the form of dory bars. First Mining Gold is another company I founded. It's dirt cheap. It's in the development permitting process, which is the most boring part of the development of a mining company, and it can take years. And it's just I feel sorry for some of the shareholders that own it, but I can tell you that fundamentally it's doing quite well. Our management team is doing some great stuff behind the scenes, and they are de-risking their key assets. They're doing deals, and the company is well financed. It's got forget the last count, but it's got over $100 million in marketable assets on its balance sheet, so it's well financed. And but the stock is trading at almost 2-3-year lows, or close to 2-3-year lows. So people who are looking at gold in Eastern Canada, that's a great place to be. Silver producer, First Majestic, one of the leading silver companies in the space. I own Silver One. People know I own that company. It's a development company, or exploration. I shouldn't call it development. It's not quite development yet, but an exploration company in Nevada that I quite like, with a lot of silver. And then a company I just helped go public, a company called Snowline Gold. It's a company focused on Yukon, and it's got a very, very large land package in the Yukon. It's got Paul Majestic, Quentin Henning, and Eric Sprott involved in that one. And it's just gone public. It's only been public for about 30 days now. I suggest if people are interested in gold in the Yukon, that might be something that could interest people.
Oh, it's terrific news. So that will be Sprott, and I think the other gentleman you mentioned, I think he has ties with Talvi Costa and Crescat Capital.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's Quentin Henning.
Right.
Yeah, and he's with Nova Gold. He's with he's well known geologist out there, quite well respected geologist. I think he's active in 20 separate companies. We're pleased to have him on board with Snowline Gold, and of course Paul Majestic as well, who's quite well known.
Keith Neumeyer, we appreciate the time that you've given us, and I hope we can do this again soon.
Great. Well, appreciate the time, Patrick.
That was Keith Neumeyer, CEO and founder of First Majestic Silver and founder of First Mining Gold. For more information of his work and his views on the economy, please visit the First Majestic website, www.firstmajestic.com, and he can be found on social media like Twitter at Keith_Neumeyer. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the SBTV channel to be updated on new content. And do also check out the SBTV podcast on iTunes and Spotify.